Does that red light mean okay? So do you know how to? Okay, no,
Yeah,
oh
I got it.
yeah,
I got it.
it's been rolling. It's been okay. Welcome to this what do they call these things again? Podcasts?
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
yeah,
called
yeah,
podcasts.
It's
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
just a,
yeah.
it's just a conversation. Well, we are just hoping if someone ever finds these recordings, we are just a group of explorers, you could say, currently isolated. It would seem on a lunar base. Everybody else left about 20 years ago to after downsizing. Well, the space corporations really kind of dying down right now, but well, we're staying up here. Is all I can say. But well, for the moment, we are just up here, still on the bloody moon, because it's still a rock in space, and apparently a few people on Earth still care. But yeah, I'm up here with. Want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, this is Captain Antonio Williams. How are you doing, Commander?
I'm doing well. I'm okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Oh, hi. Hi. This is Private Brandon Trust. I'm here too.
Okay, that was a little much. That was a little much, Private. Maybe you could tone it down next time.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Just
I'm a little excited to be talking about
well,
things,
it's okay. You
other
can
than
just
codes and
act more like on just
space and
act
stuff.
more like Lewis, and you'll be
Okay.
fine.
Okay. I got it.
He
No
knows what
worries.
he's doing. Yeah, we're just here to talk about whatever weird things we remember from Earth. We do have lots of movies and TV up here, so it's pretty much the only thing we watch anymore. But ever since Disney bought everything that ever exists is on Disney Plus. So
Corporate monopoly.
exactly.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
yeah, I guess we shall dive into that mighty temptress adventure.
Oh, of course.
You know who said that? No, anyone?
Who said that?
So Dumbledore.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Captain. That was Dumbledore. Once again, Private, if you could please
Okay.
hold yourself to the same standard that
I got you. I got you.
our fine
You
captain
gotta get
has.
cultured, Private.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
No, it's fine. I'm just
I
suggesting
mean,
a few
we've
things.
got time, so
It would just really help if you could attempt, just attempt. You don't do that often, but attempt. Well, I guess the first thing we could talk about is space
Star
Star
Wars.
Wars. Star Wars. Oh yeah, that's the one. That's the one. A few old classics from down on Earth.
from how many years ago? When did
Uh,
that? When did that last one come out? Skywalker Rises or something?
uh, the Rising of Skywalker, I
Yeah,
think, is what
The
it
Rise of
was
Skywalker.
called.
the Rise of Skywalker.
Thank
What
you,
is that?
once again, thank you, Captain.
Okay.
We should all exceed to your levels.
Yep.
Yes. So Star Wars.
Boy, there's a lot of to talk about there, isn't there?
Why don't we
So-
start off with just talking about, I guess, the overall theme of Star Wars. What does it mean? What is it trying to convey? Because obviously, any movie or any book, well, most movies and books and things, they um are designed to teach us something. So what is Star Wars trying to teach us?
Well, Star Wars, in my personal opinion, is about the basic um, uh, archetypes of light and dark fighting against each other. And I mean, they're displayed very prominently in the Jedi and the Sith. But I mean, what's interesting about Star Wars is it's not about always the Jedi and the Sith, the good and the light, because things aren't always so necessarily like concrete or always just like mutually exclusive that way. There's like the bounty hunters, the smugglers, the rebellion. I mean, things aren't always, there's in betweens, that are not necessarily just
The
just
Mandalorian.
the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just people.
You could look at it as a traditional good versus evil, light versus dark story, but there are many lessons, I think, to be learned inside the Star Wars universe itself. Like, you could go on for hours and hours, things that we learned from the Jedi and even the Sith at some points.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. For sure.
yeah, I mean, well, just let's like think about it from the perspective of a Jedi. I mean, I grew up more with the characters from the prequel trilogy, so like my mind was always focused more on the Jedi. I mean, in the originals, they were like a much more of like a not necessarily a background character, but like this more ancient religion that some like it was heard of, but like only a few people like, even followed it at that point. You know, long extinct after Order 66. But like growing up with like the prequels, it was a religion. It was like an academy. It was a way more of a way of life than it was in the originals. So like, what does it mean to even like be a Jedi?
Well, to me, I think one of the biggest example. I think if we're talking prequels, I it's kind of my personal opinion, but I think the Jedi, they are Jedi, yeah, sure, and they are good people. I mean, I'm sure they have good intentions, but all the restrictions, man, I think they put maybe too much restriction that kind of it kind of aided in them losing their, I guess, losing their way and not being what they used to be. And I think even in Old Republic, there are some examples of a Jedi councils maybe being similar to the prequels, but I think it'd be interesting to maybe one day see a story of a Jedi council that was almost in perfect. That was almost how it should have been. But maybe that's the whole message. Maybe the message is that the council, you can never have one last so long being as good as it is. Maybe it's just bound to fail, you know?
I think that's true.
No, yeah, that's kind of the perfect way to put it. It's kind of funny because my first memory of Star Wars actually was when I was about, like, I think 4, and I had no idea what Star Wars was, and I found a DVD for Return of the Jedi lying under this, like, so on our TV that we had back then, we had these like drawers underneath with movies in them, and I pulled it out and I saw a picture of Luke holding the green lightsaber, and I was like, what the heck is this? And 4-year-old me decided to play a game with the disc by sliding it across the floor. So
Oh no.
I actually scratched
Oh gosh.
I actually scratched up the entire disc, and when I put it in to watch it a few years later, once I actually like caught my interest, I couldn't get past, like, the first 3 minutes. So that was my first experience with Star
Shame
Wars.
on you.
Nice,
Shame on you.
Ron.
I tried my best, but Anyways, that's sidetracked. I back to what we were talking about.
Yeah, I think the story of Luke is not just the story of a boy saving his father, but a story of this young man kind of learning what it was to be a Jedi, you know? And I don't want to talk for too long, but I do have a lot of thoughts on this, but I do think that the message of Star Wars, if you're just thinking about the originals, it also applies when you add the prequels in, and I don't know about the sequels yet. I haven't really thought about it that much, but um, I think the message is that Sith are people who let their emotions control them. I mean, they in order to shoot force lightning, in order to use these, it is more powerful. I think I think the dark side is more powerful, but that's because I think okay, no. I think the dark side at its base level is more powerful because
It
they're
has a
they're
more obvious power.
yeah, and like it's like they're giving in to their emotions and letting them control them in order to like shoot lightning or like lift a whole star cruiser like Star Killer, but that's not canon now, but whatever. But I think, eventually like
Star
Obi-Wan says, yeah, you
what
know,
a what a concept.
yeah, what a guy, what a dude. But I think, Obi-Wan's line of "strike me down and I will become more powerful than you can imagine" is kind of resonates with this overall theme of maybe on the base level, maybe in life, the dark side is more powerful, sure, but in death, the Jedi are, if you're Force Ghost, you live forever, which is what the Sith. Maybe I don't know as much now, but in Legends, the Sith were trying to figure out how to be immortal, and the Jedi. I mean, Yoda just learned it. Well, it took a bit, but he learned it pretty quickly. But he
I,
had to have like a pure heart and stuff like that.
I think that's the interesting thing between just the Jedi versus the Sith, like just in that concept right there, is of like the very material things of life are what the Sith crave for, power, all these like life-sustained things that exist only in a physical material life, versus the things that a Jedi should strive for, maybe weren't always focused on in some of the prequel movies, but what a Jedi should strive for are the things that don't necessarily disappear in death. The kind of things like honest and true love, not a love that like blinds you or destroys you, like that kind of blind passion did to Anakin, but like the love that kind of becomes, I don't know, it's just you can't even really describe it. It's just this overarching, powerful like empathy and care and like power, that just is light. And I think that is the kind of thing that, ironically enough, ironic, right? But that the Sith
Ironic.
would never get, because for one thing, it was the kind of thing that required the patience. Instead of the immediate release of anger, it was the patience that Jedi are always talking about, and the constant wait for, you know what, you know what I mean, like just like they had to wait
Relax,
and
take a
strive
deep breath.
in their yeah, like just wait for the weird thing is they had to live their life in a way without that kind of material power that the Sith had, to die in a way to get to the point where when they die, they would have those kind of they would have that, which is the ironic kind of thing, is they're striving for everlasting
Ironic.
life, where the Sith are just striving to hold on to what little life they have, what little power they have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's something that I think, between the three of us, we share the same beliefs, so it's very familiar. And we won't go into that. But just I think as a very Christian sort of, because George obviously put a lot of Christian themes into these movies, such as like a virgin birth and the chosen one, kind of like Moses or whatever. But yeah. Anyway, just a little spiel.
I want to talk about the prequels for a minute because there's a lot to be said there. So could we start down on that track?
I will say
Sure.
one
I
more
noticed.
thing.
I noticed that our wait. I'll let you say this, but I do notice that our lovely Captain Antonio Lewis has forwarded and emailed a PDF to all of us. So once again, claps to our captain here. Private, work
Well,
harder. Work harder.
I'm sorry.
The
Thank you.
last
Sorry,
thing
as
I'll
you were saying.
say is that I think Luke figured out what it meant to be a Jedi. And that, I think the exact moment he figured it out is just before he throws his lightsaber away and Return of the Jedi. Because at that moment, Luke had given in. He'd given into the anger for, the Empire, for things his father has done, and he gave into his passions and whatever, the Emperor, whatever, and beat his father into submission, like took him out. And he saw the power, but Luke stood there and looked down at his hand and looked at Vader's hand, seeing that it was also robotic, and decided, probably had a flashback to Empire where he went into the Dagobah cave and saw his face in the mask. At that moment, he realizes, if I do this, if I don't stop now, I'm going to be the next Vader. Which isn't there some Legends comic that kind of explores that? Like
Yeah, there
Luke.
was. I actually have a lot of the pictures open up to that right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just sequeling then in transitioning into the prequel stuff. I think that's just the difference between Anakin and Luke because they did have a very similar upbringing. You know,
Yeah.
raised in the exact same on the exact same planet with in a sandy desert. You know, striving to survive, but always looking out to the stars, wishing for adventure, but realizing that there was more to life than adventure. They both came to very different conclusions on that. And then, especially discovering the Jedi and all those different things, wanting that adventure. Anakin, you know, he fell in love and all those things. Luke, that wasn't quite the same story, but he approached his anger at that different level. And I think that's, I know, I just think it's very interesting when you compare the two characters.
Yeah, for sure.
So, anyways, the prequels.
Oh boy.
The entire
What-
story behind them. The entire story behind them is based on one man, really, when you think about it. Because
Anakin.
you have Anakin that he's raising up and building. But who is the mastermind behind the entire thing?
Is it Palpatine?
Correct. Wow. A plus. Good job.
Thank you. Is this the doing better that you were referring to?
I mean, you're not doing great.
Okay, well, anyways, the prequels. There's a lot to be said there, especially with. Should we start with Clone Wars?
Um,
We can talk
This
about
is-
that later.
yeah, we can do that later.
Okay,
Sorry, your suggestions are appreciated, but they're not important right now.
exactly, as always, sir. Fine, you give the suggestions. I give up.
Well, I was giving the suggestion. I was leading us into talking about Palpatine because
Oh, I see. It was a segue. Okay, I'm sorry.
It was a segue. Thank you. It was
I'm
a
not
segue into
I'm
what we
not
were
a good one.
talking about.
Get with the
Segue.
times. Get
It
with
was
the
like
times.
it was
What
like
is
a
the
funnel.
times? What year is it?
We were talking like 2098.
Remember Corona?
Don't talk about that.
Okay. None of
You're
us were alive, actually.
giving me Corona flashbacks.
If you do the math, sir, we weren't alive.
Maybe you weren't.
Okay, yeah, I don't know your age. I'm sorry. You might be older than me. We
what I
don't
thought.
talk. We communicate. We don't.
Anyways, about Palpatine,
Let's start in the Phantom Menace.
Oh boy.
What is his character in the Phantom Menace?
Well, he had hair, more hair than he did. But okay, that's not
Astute
important.
observation.
you know,
Private.
you know what makes me so upset is that
A
people-
surprise, to be sure.
they bash on the prequels for being too political. They're like, if George says this is for kids, then why'd he put so much political crap in it? But if he didn't put the political crap
Children
in
need
it,
to
no one
understand
would.
politics.
Everyone would be so confused about how Palpatine just came out of nowhere. It might not be the most exciting stuff, but it's telling you how Palpatine got to where he is. It's showing you the little things he's doing, the little sort of nudges, the little inputs he's giving that caused him to become chancellor, and then after that, of course, the emperor.
Thank you. Because so many people harsh on that, and it drives me nuts.
It's like, yeah, it's not the most fun thing to watch, but it's important. You just kind of have to accept it.
Well, Phantom. I don't know. What would you consider to be the most political one out of the prequels that has like?
I think Phantom Menace is.
I was about to
honestly-
say Phantom Menace, but I was debating.
Yeah, in Revenge of the Sith, it's very on the side, which it has the best political.
Which is
Revenge
good,
of the Sith
which is
has
good.
the best political line, I think, in all of Star Wars. Which is, some people look at it as a throwaway line, but it's where Padme says, "So this is how liberty dies," with thunderous applause.
was
That is
just
an
about to say-
amazing line. That's an
so
amazing
good. It's
line.
so good. So
And
good.
it's always overlooked because it's. I mean, you see that in even Hitler's rise to power. I mean, nobody cared because it was sure this guy's right, and so they all just start following him blindly.
Yep. Palpatine
Yeah.
is Hitler, or a derivative of Hitler.
Yeah,
Probably-
kind of is space Hitler.
Space Hitler. I
He
mean,
was very
he's
racist,
he's done
We
some
don't talk
pretty
about
horrible
that.
things.
but he was very racist. Him and Count Dooku wanted an army of only humans, a Jedi order of only humans, because they believed every other race was inferior.
Bruh.
He is Space Hitler.
Have you met
He's Space Hitler.
Dirge? Have you met Dirge and his alien race?
No, want to know why? Because that's Legends.
Oh,
Ah,
okay, all
ah,
right. Well,
he pulled the Legends card on you.
he did, yeah. Got him. I
Suck it.
really do think that I think the Phantom Menace is the most political, just in the sense that the movie is based around a trade like dispute, like a a blockade, whereas everything else is more centered around
There's
the
entire
Clone
Wars
Wars.
episodes based on that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Well,
It's- I don't
that
think-
too, but I'm talking. We asked which prequel movie was the most political, and that's I think it
Yeah.
is because it just
I think it is, but it also shows the reason for like there starting to be a war. You know, like I mean, that was the formation of like the separatist movement out of the Republic Senate. You know, like that's what made it like the Phantom Menace gave it showed like how necessary it was, and it just showed all of it starting to fall apart. You know, with starting
is
from Newt Gunray and all like the
yeah,
separatists. You know,
which is interesting, right? Because freaking you've got like wow, I've lost my train of thought. Someone else say something. I gotta remember what I was gonna say.
You wanna go ahead, William? I was
Okay.
I was just intently listening.
Of course you were. Well, I mean, back to Palpatine, like, I mean, watching him, like, he just the way he, like, just the way he swoops in. I mean, from the very beginning, Anakin is introduced to the Republic. Even he's introducing like he knows very little about it. You know, he's this very outside. You know, well, the Republic. You know, out in the center of the galaxy. That's what he knows it as. But the minute he introduces, there's a problem, and the problem is that it's a very problem solution based situation presented to him where um, the separatists have caused a problem with this girl that he likes, Planet. You know, and immediately the person who comes in and solves it and helps solve it is Palpatine. You know, he's the one striving for there to be a solution right there. So obviously, it makes sense for him to already start looking at him as a hero archetype, right? Start
Yeah, for
trusting him
sure.
more, start looking at him more. I mean, I'm pretty sure Palpatine started to, at least in some of the, I'm not even sure if it's canon or not, but like in some of the like, I think that's actually newer enough comics, but Palpatine knew or started to at least figure out who Anakin was pretty quickly. Because, remind me again, what's the timeline on where Plagueis dies? Because I think Plagueis dies just after the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, you're correct with that.
Which is weird to think about.
That
Wow, I did
that
not
Darth
know
Plagueis,
that.
that Darth
I
Plagueis
thought it
was
was
alive.
before.
No,
No, I did too for the longest time. But for one thing, there's in the book, it's shown that Plagueis is actually in the movie. There's a person who walks into Queen Amidala's chambers, and in the book, it's like, "Where's the boy?" He's left with the Jedi to Naboo, and he starts asking a few other questions and then leaves. And it's believed that that figure in a hood is hinted to as a dark, imposing, very tall, and strange alien figure with a dark presence or whatever. And it's supposed that that character really is Plagueis,
I mean,
which makes sense.
it kind of like I don't. Who else could it be?
Well, it makes sense. I mean, Plagueis obviously would take note of Anakin existing. A Virgins in the Force, as he's called, like Anakin, Palpatine knew it, and I'm sure Plagueis knew it, and I'm sure as soon as Palpatine saw, I'm sure he already been plotting to kill Plagueis because of course everyone does. So I every freaking Sith does. That's their job. Have you seen the Force Unleashed? But like as soon as he saw Anakin, that I think is when he started to realize his plan.
Don't get me
and I'm
talking on
sure
Force
he
Unleashed.
had, an apprentice at the time already, Darth Maul, which we'll get into that. How the rule of two isn't always the rule of two, but
That's all his
Yeah.
interest.
I think as soon as he saw Anakin, he realized what his plan was. You know, to get this kid, the virgin, the most powerful, potentially the chosen one, not just on his side, but his apprentice. I think that's when he started getting the real drive to kill Plagueis and move on with his plans.
Yeah, which is so genius, right? Like, I think another thing that we've written down that we should talk about is just about the chosen one in general, and how most of the time it's usually like this character is the chosen one, and they come out and then they are destined to fight the bad guy and beat him, and it usually happens. Harry Potter, Voldemort tries to kill him, doesn't work. He is chosen. Well, I mean, you could go into the stuff about Neville, but if anything, just the idea that the chosen one and then they kill Voldemort in the end. But Palpatine is so genius that he's like, I'm not gonna just waste all my time trying to kill this kid and just get him out of here, because there's probably gonna be another person,
Exactly.
Ray,
After
that
spending
rises
so much
up.
time studying the Great Mystery. Did nobody? Okay, sorry.
I got you, but
Okay, thank you.
he's just genius, because he just manipulates Anakin his whole life. Like, as soon as he gets as near the end when they're leaving Naboo, and he pats him on the shoulder and he's like, "We'll watch your career with great interest." It's like that
He
first.
knows.
Yeah,
He knows.
he knows.
Mm.
So it's so genius, man. And I don't know. I think Palpatine's character design is a little bland, but it's also just so creepy that it's like cool, you know?
It's bland in a way that just shouldn't you guys be able to tell? Shouldn't but of course the audience knows, but you'd think the Jedi Council wouldn't you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
it feels that way, doesn't it?
Mace Windu says that, it's like the dark side of the Force surrounds the Chancellor.
Because seriously,
Okay,
Palpatine was
okay.
in the undergrounds of the Jedi Temple and in Coruscant, dealing with Count Dooku and all these things of the Sith. And I don't it feels that way, doesn't it?
Did y'all notice?
Yeah, couldn't the
The Jedi
Jedi
Council has
sense
a
that
very
something was going on?
low passive perception.
In the last episode of Clone Wars season 6, they literally do a 24-hour meditation. I don't know. Would somewhere in there would they have felt something that would have been like, oh, there's something messed up with Chancellor Palpatine over here.
Felt it throughout the entire time, throughout all the Clone Wars. The very first thing that Count Dooku says to Obi-Wan as the Clone Wars are starting is, "Yo, there's a Dark Lord of the Sith controlling the Senate. Thought you
Yeah,
should know." What do they do with that knowledge?
I mean,
They say in Revenge of the Sith, "You're the Dark Lord of the Sith we've been looking for." But what was I mean, I feel Luke in the Last Jedi. He's saying, it was the Jedi Council that allowed the rise of Emperor Palpatine and the creation of the Dark Lord Darth Vader. What were they doing? We'll get to some of the flaws of the Jedi Council, I guess. But I mean, what honestly were the Jedi Council doing? What were they expecting? They've been told there was a Jedi. What did they assume? Count Dooku was trying to trick them? What was I guess that's the point of the Clone Wars, was to distract them. But
Well,
it's weird because it's all it all feels like some big inside job, because literally almost not literally no yeah literally everything was being manipulated by the Sith and by Dooku and Palpatine, even the clones, man, inhibitor chips, really, shout out to
yeah.
that
shout,
is such a frustrating part of the
it
Clone Wars.
it is
Watching the
watching
Jedi just go meh.
yeah, and
No, okay.
seeing fives fighting for that, just something's up here and getting killed for it.
Yeah,
So it's
man.
just aggravating. But I mean, I guess that's the point.
Seriously.
It's really interesting to see the Jedi and how they handle it, because I if anyone's listening to this, I might spoil Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic a little bit, so skip ahead. But Revan, obviously,
Every single one of us.
if you've played the game, that's an inside joke for you. If you've played the game, you know that he got amnesia. His apprentice turned on him and kind of knocked him out, and he almost died, but Bastila saved him but couldn't really save his memory.
And was nearly manipulated. Well, he was manipulated by the Jedi Council.
Exactly, but like when he came to Dantooine, they all knew. They knew he was Revan. Like they knew it, and so they didn't want to train him back to the Force because they were afraid that he would find out who he is and they would be back in the same thing. So I think
But that explains why he learned so quickly.
Yeah. And it's not the same with the prequels Jedi Council, I don't think, but I think it's that kind of underlying theme of he is the chosen one, but if that gets to his head or if someone were to, I don't know, exploit that in some way, will he turn? And if he does turn, will the Jedi be able to beat him? Which obviously, no.
I just looked up the actual prophecy for the Chosen One in Star Wars, referring to Anakin.
Is that
Chosen One shall
canon or is
come.
that Legends?
I'm pretty sure it's canon. It looks like this is published later, and I think it's the same one that they. You refer to the prophecy when we use this boy. Okay. Sure if this is canon, but I think at least at one point this is what it was called.
Right.
A chosen one shall come, born of no father, and through him will an ultimate balance in the Force be restored. I think this once again goes back to Palpatine's genius, because the Jedi would hear that, and maybe, I don't know, some of them be scared of what that means. What does ultimate balance in the Force mean? I mean, there's the memes going around of like,
yeah.
ultimate, like with the balance in the Sith and the Jedi. What does that mean? Because the Jedi see it one way and the Sith see it the other way, but it doesn't. It's even more complicated than that. But I think the Jedi might see that and going, there have been way more Jedi than there have been Sith. What is he gonna do? What is that like? If they're viewing it as that, if they're viewing like what does balance in the Force even like really mean? Because we lean towards the light, obviously, or like how many of them are scared of just what like the uncertainty of the chosen one in that prophecy, I mean,
yeah, that's actually a really interesting point you bring up, is that
which might be why Mace and so many other members of the Jedi Council were hesitant with him, because
exactly
they might have actually believed that he was the chosen one, but what do you do with that?
And there's the line that I think Palpatine says it, correct me if I'm wrong, but he says, the Jedi are afraid to lose their power, which he might have been just saying to manipulate Anakin.
Well, that's that scene though, where he's like, the Sith are the Sith. Anakin's like, the Sith only love their power. They're terrified to lose it, and then Palpatine's like, and the Jedi aren't. And I think that's one of the things that gets Anakin's mind spinning. Like, oh, wait, yeah, of
All who
course.
gain
You
power
think they're not
are
scared of
afraid
me?
to lose
To
it.
lose it.
I think that's the line.
Exactly.
Which is interesting because it's like I mean, if you think about it, on a base level, it would be awesome to have all Jedi and only light side because there would only be good in the world. But I think again with our three beliefs,
also, I think that's also beyond just the gray Jedi, the flaw in some of the Jedi Council's view on what the light side and what balance was, because I think a lot of Jedi grew up in this massive order of like these massive order protection knights, like actual knights of the old Republic, who were these protectors and these fighters and these like, well, I mean, it says in the name knights,
yeah,
were to fight and do all these powers and stuff. But you think about like Gunjin, not necessarily a gray Jedi, but I think he understood what it meant to be a Jedi, because he understood it was more than, any of these concrete things. It was more about trusting in the Force, which I think makes sense then that he was the one who figured out, or at least was one of the ones who figured out, how to survive after death and slowly become and have semblance in the Force was because he understood that to find that inner balance of letting yourself go into the Force. It's like what Luke says, you know, to say that the Force belongs to the Jedi. To say that if the Jedi die, the Force dies, that's vanity. Don't you understand that? I think that makes sense. I think it can make sense. I mean, this all harkens back to why Luke doesn't want or didn't want in the Last Jedi the character the Jedi to come back because he especially after doing all the research and stuff he had after Return of the Jedi, he understood why so many flaws there were with the idea of the Jedi Order, and I just think that's super interesting.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything you want to say there, Private?
No, I'm just kind of intently listening and kind of. I mean, you're saying it the way it has to be said.
Yeah, I just didn't want to leave you out, but we obviously could probably have a whole nother session about the sequels, but really, I think it was I think it was so interesting what Ryan was doing with the idea of the Jedi Council. I think, in my opinion, that's what the whole sequel trilogy could have been about, because we already got these 6 movies about Anakin, and it's almost a perfect story about, obviously not all the every movie have flaws, but like it's so perfect in that the way it balances on each other and builds on each other, and Anakin and Vader and bringing him back and stuff. And I think the sequels should have just been about not fighting some big bad, not bringing balance. It should have been about, should there be a council again, or what is the future of the Jedi, or what is a Jedi? And
I think that would have been a better direction to go in any way that was an overarching theme instead of just the same old theme.
yeah, and I can't stop thinking about it because it's such an interesting idea that if we would have seen, okay, so people, Force Awakens was solid, it was good, it was all right. And then you watch The Last Jedi, and so much happened in that movie that changed so much that I think,
You're just like, oh, whoa.
yeah, and I
Which
think
is weird because so many people thought it was such a slow-paced movie, but it really did. So much changed in that
it
movie.
it did, and I think people would have liked the idea of Luke's character more if we had started with the story of him and Kylo in the academy in 7. Why wasn't that the story? Everyone wanted to see Grandmaster Luke in his full potential, going ham, whatever. I wanted to see that too, but I also love the idea of Luke, what happens to him in Last Jedi. But imagine if Force Awakens was, we saw that Luke, then we saw the Academy get destroyed by Kylo and his creation, and then we got the Last Jedi, and it would help us understand better
Exactly.
how why and Luke was doing what he was doing, which again we can have a whole nother session about the sequels, and I don't want to go too much into it, but
Yeah, but I
this is
just want to
such a
say
good
this before you do, because I mean, just think about how much more sense that makes. Because they're
it
spending the entire movie
does.
trying to find Luke. Why did Luke run away? It doesn't make sense, and it would be so. I feel like I would have been so bored if in the Last Jedi they found Luke and he was like, "Oh yeah, sorry, my bad. I crashed my X-wing. Thanks. Let's go fight the First Order." You know, I'm totally down with that. It's so much more interesting for her to go there and him be like, "No, no, I'm not going to do that. Are you kidding me?"
Which he did, but I think the way it was executed was a little,
It was
because
uncomfortable for some fans
I
because
know,
it was the polar opposite of what they were expecting. But
and
and it was for me too. But like, I think it was. I don't know.
the thing I keep coming back to is that the thing that made everyone probably want the most upset about Luke was the fact that he threw the lightsaber behind his shoulder, which I don't think it should have been that extreme, but I do like the idea of it. But maybe he should have just like grabbed it, looked at it, then just got kind of a sad, disappointed look in his eyes and just handed it back to Ray and just said, "I can't help you,"
I
and
think it
like
would have
walked
been
off.
or something like where he saw it and had kind of like a Cal Kestis like touching it and just feeling all of the hatred and stuff that Anakin had done with it and the failure of the Jedi Council and just had like a spark vision of just like, oh my gosh, all the things that happened with this blade are representative of the failure of the Jedi Order. You know how cool that would have been, and then just like him
That would
dropping
have
it and
been
going,
sick.
no, and that would have made him taking off his Jedi robe so much more meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that have
Which,
been cool?
yeah, which
I feel
I
like that
kind
might
of,
have even been what happened in my mind. I'm just gonna say that's what happened in
I
canon in my
know,
head
yeah,
because it makes
headcanon.
sense to me.
It
You know,
makes so much sense.
just him looking at that blade, being drawn back to his fight with Vader the very first time, and then just feeling all the things that had happened with that blade.
I mean,
You
why do
know,
you think he ran away to the island in the first place?
because it was a repeat of what happened before.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
created another Vader.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
In his attempt to create good and search for that same light, he done exactly what the Jedi Council did before, which I think is the genius of the Last Jedi. It might
Which,
not have been executed in the ways a lot of people wanted it, but
yeah,
I think it's
which
perfect.
people are like, Luke would never create another Vader. He just beat a Vader. Why would he create another one? But it was a mistake that happened for a split second. I mean, people
That was his
talk about
humanity.
they talk about the every time someone mentions like Luke was gonna kill Kylo, they're like, that's not his character. They always like put a picture or show the scene of Kylo's perspective where Luke is like crazy eyed and has the lightsaber out and swings at him. But do they forget about what really happened? Luke was there. He sensed another Vader emerging and decided, "Oh, I can end this right now." But it's his grandson, which he turned it on, and at right as he turned it on, he was like, "This is wrong." And that's when Kylo woke up. It was a mistake. People make mistakes, and yeah, it's Star Wars, it's another universe. But
I love that
the point
moment.
of the movie is of any movie, if fiction or not, is to teach you about people, about yourselves, about how to
I
be good people.
That moment though, just that moment where he just looks down at that lightsaber, and you can just see him going, "I'm This is the same mistake." I mean, how do you think Anakin felt so full of anger, wanting to stop what Palpatine said he could stop? Because Palpatine told him the Jedi were planning to destroy everything. In his head, Anakin, so full of rage and anger at the Jedi Order, it made sense to want to hate them at that point. So killing younglings, killing all of it, ending all of it, seemed like the only solution. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Um, but back to like the love stuff. I pulled up a quote. I don't know if you guys see it or not. That Jolie Bindo makes
Joey
in KOTOR.
Bindo!
Yeah, my boy. If you talk to him enough in KOTOR, he tells you about his story, and he's basically another Qui-Gon, right? But he's much older, and he's a Jedi, and then he's basically a great Jedi, and he exiled himself or just kind of secluded himself in the Shadowlands of Kashyyyk. But he follows you on this journey because he finds out you're Revan like as soon as he meets you, but he doesn't tell you till later. He just like
Like,
you,
and once you ask him, he's like, "Yeah, I knew," just like casually, and
and
that's
he's like that doesn't matter.
yeah.
Anyway, but I love his quote. You're talking to him about his wife and stuff, and they're like, isn't like attachment not okay? And Joey's like, well, okay. He says, love doesn't lead to the dark side. Passion can lead to rage and fear and can be controlled, but passion is not the same as love. Controlling your passions while being in love, that's what they should teach you to beware. That's what the Jedi should teach you. Which Anakin, I do think, started out in love with Padme, but once the nightmares came about her dying, it switched to passion because he was passionate about keeping her alive. And
Well,
the
think about
same
him
with
and
his
his
mom.
mom. You know,
Yeah.
he'd seen the exact same thing with his mom, and he saw the Jedi. I was listening to the Star Wars Theory guy talking about this, so I will give credit there. But I mean, just think about that, where he grew up in a terrible situation, you know, and the one thing he had was his love for his mom, and he wanted to come back and free her. That was the one thing he wanted. And so when all of a sudden this little orphan boy, well, not really orphan, but like this kid is just taken into this Jedi space wizard order, and is started to get taught all these powers and stuff. Of course, the one thing in his head is, I gotta save my mom. So the minute he starts to get nightmares about something happening to his mom, of course, what does he do? He goes home, but he's missed it. His Jedi powers weren't enough. So when the same thing starts happening to Padme, it shifts from love. It turns to that passion, that same passion that he had when he was killing the Tusken Raiders. It turns to that same
Exactly. Yeah.
angry passion because it's their fault. They didn't help me save her. It was
Mhm.
the one thing I wanted. It was the one thing I made a promise about, and they didn't
There's
help me.
there's flaws in it. That's what I love about it.
Isn't Anakin just such a tragic hero? Like it's
He
so
He's such a
is,
cool
sad.
character.
and
It's
I
so
don't feel
sad,
like
and it's
he's
underrated.
yeah, very underrated. Yeah, it's just not talked about enough. I don't think.
His character is not talked about anywhere near
Because
enough.
we had the prequels, but then we got the Clone Wars, which really showcases his journey even more, leading up to Revenge of the Sith, which makes Revenge of the Sith like so much more devastating than it already is.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I hear people say, "Oh, the Clone Wars show is what the prequels should have been."
mm-mm.
The Clone Wars should. I can't imagine Clone Wars being anything else but a show. It's so much time. It has to be a show. And
And
George
of
always
course, you're not
said
even
that is the
covering all.
future. Yeah, he
It's
always said the future of Star Wars was shows,
it
not
it it,
movies.
it literally is like when you're playing because just to give like the idea where when I first realized that I was like, oh yeah, the Clone Wars were really that long is when I was actually playing Republic Commando, and before one of the missions it said day like 200 something something, and then the next mission it said day 738, and I was like, oh yeah, this lasted like a ton of years.
It's
Yeah.
like I think like the all three trilogies are the pillars that like are set up, and then they need to be filled in with all these shows and like stories and video games all over that can tell the rest of the stories. They can fill them in. But I want to talk more about Anakin's character because
Yeah,
my
sure.
mom said this the other day that like how does like I just don't like it because how does this guy who you see as this hero archetype all of a sudden just go and turn into murdering kids? She doesn't like that, and I'm like I started
Exactly what my
thinking about
mom
it and
says.
like how yeah, well, how does that character go there?
That's what the Clone Wars showcases.
Which my mom is the same, and she hates the when he screams "I hate you." She used to not let me watch, like if that scene was on TV, she would like I don't she wouldn't not let me watch it, but she like try and get me out of the room so that it wouldn't see it because she just hates it because I tease her about not liking Anakin. She's like, I like him until he like turns bad and starts killing kids, which it's horrible,
But it's that
obviously.
anger. Why is he angry?
And
Because
Palpatine told him to.
because for all the time that he's with the Jedi, there are zero solutions to anything, any of his questions or anything. You know, for one thing, I mean, just think about this. He knew that there were possibly potentially powers in the Jedi within the Jedi realm of the light side that could save someone's life. But of course, those would be in the restricted section of the library, where only Jedi Masters could reach them. So
Good Harry
imagine being
Potter reference.
promoted to a Jedi to on the Jedi Council, yet still not have the Jedi Master rank of Jedi Master. Think about the perspective he has right there, just adding in the
That's
fact of
frustrating.
not being able to have the knowledge that could save his wife potentially from the Jedi. Think about that because there were records in the Jedi Temple containing knowledge on how to save someone's life through the light side. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, which kind of makes me laugh about Rise of Skywalker, and it uses force healing so easily. And obviously Rey read the ancient checks, so that's my explanation for why more Jedi didn't use it. But it's just interesting to me
Interesting,
that
sir.
yeah, that force heal like it I don't again when we talk about the sequels maybe another time we can get more into this, but I just want to say that force heal's been around in games like all the time. But once they brought it into the movie, a lot of people didn't like it, and I think they didn't like it because it was a plot device. But anyway, I think it's just interesting the whole idea of force healing and stuff. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, think about the Jedi Council. Like, why would they not want anyone to know about force healing? Because it's a part of the Jedi, that same love, the idea of love that wasn't fostered early in Jedi youth, that of course just no one talked about. They didn't know how to like like that special kind of love and caring that people weren't talked about. I mean, Anakin says it, we're encouraged to love, but we're not taught how is the awkward thing, you know.
uh, which
So
I fully think a Jedi can fall in love with someone and like marry them. I think it's fine, but Anakin had so much like regret and so much pressure because he loved her so much and he married her, and then he had to live this secret life knowing he was in the wrong, and that I think that helped in his turn in the end.
what scares me more is I think that Padme wasn't going to die because I think the visions or him warning or something warning because it is now canon that Palpatine was the one who killed Padme. He was the one who drained her life force to sustain Anakin's life force through the dark side because that's how the dark side works. You have to
Yep.
take something and keep something else,
I say
which I
this
think
every
is
time.
ironic, but
Ironic.
it's his vision. It's the Force warning him about Palpatine, but he doesn't realize that
I
because
say this
what
every time,
dying
dude.
is him.
Every time this comes up, I always say a quote from Master Oogway because it fits so well. One often meets his destiny on the road he takes to avoid it.
It makes so much sense.
Important.
Importante.
Importante.
It was
It's just
self-fulfilling prophecy.
oh,
So
it's
many
so
ways.
good. It's so good. Anakin's so darn underrated. It's annoying.
Yeah, and you can give all the crap you want to George Lucas for his directing on the prequels, but I
They're
don't care. That
fine anyway.
yeah, that writing and that directing, I mean, it's perfect for what it is.
Well, no one liked the character because they just didn't understand it. I mean, there's that quote about Hayden. You know, as Anakin, Hayden played the character perfectly. The people just didn't like the character. You know, and I think that's what's interesting about the character of Anakin is that people go into it expecting like this Luke character with a much more different fall than they thought. You know,
Yep.
but of course that's another problem with the way people expect things in Star Wars and why a lot of people don't like the sequels is they get an expectation. So of course that's why a lot of people don't like the prequels as well. But it just makes sense. It's dirt. It's disgusting. It's gross. It's human. You know. It's that's the thing about Anakin. He's this person who just doesn't know what to do because the people he should be relying on and trusting him and telling him what to do, and the people that he's looking to for answers, the Jedi don't trust him because they're scared, because they're biased. They've been living their way one way this entire time. They don't know what to do with him because he's different, which is ironic considering he's the chosen one who could have potentially saved them.
Yeah, and I think it's so genius. Like we could also talk about this some other time or now. I don't know, it doesn't matter. But like the idea of the originals coming out first and then the prequels, which generate some issues, yeah, but also is kind of genius because
Because that's what George was planning the entire time.
yeah, imagine having in the 70s the prequels and seeing this dark character Anakin fall and
Why
become
would
this
you
horrible
care?
person,
That's so weird, you
and you
know?
don't know what happens to him, which might be exciting for some people, but some people might be immediately turned off and be like, this is terrible. I don't want to watch this. But knowing beforehand what happens to him and then watching him fall and then having that hope that Luke's going to come and help him, it's like, yeah, like, let's go, dude. So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many parallels just between him and Luke, and just the. You can talk about Anakin's character all day because just Hayden Christensen played him. Because I mean, obviously he knew the way things were going to end, but even beyond that, he'd read the entire script when he was acting it all out, so he knew exactly how things were going to end. He knew that in Revenge of the Sith, in the beginning of it, it was going to end with him on fire screaming, "I hate you" at Obi-Wan. He knew that from the start.
Yeah, man. I just have to say I love little Clone Wars, little General Skywalker moment at the start and in the Battle of Coruscant where uh they have that escort of Arc 170s and they veer off and get attacked, and Anakin kind of gets a little restless and says, "I'm gonna go help them out," which is what he would do. But then Obi-Wan has to remind him, "No, we're here for a different reason." But General Skywalker would so much. If that was Rex or just any 501st, he would immediately want to just turn his ship around, blast all the Volta droids, and like help them because he loves the clones. And I love that we get that little moment. There's probably a couple more, but that one little moment of General Skywalker just one last time.
I just miss George's writing because it's
I
done
I
so
do too.
well, and a lot of people don't like it. But I'm done caring about what other people like say about it because, well, I just don't care. It's
I think
brilliant.
I think
It's
it
genius.
alludes what Hayden Christensen said in an interview, where the ones that are talking negative and saying those things are just the loudest ones. Like most people don't
Yeah,
actually think those things.
he was talking about Kelly Marie Tran and Rose
And
Tico.
yeah, and Last Jedi, when he was on the red carpet for his film called like Little Italy or something,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, the guy had asked that, and that's what his response was, which I think almost perfectly says it all. These people are talking negative and saying all these bad things about the prequels and about Hayden and his acting and everything, but that none of it's like none of that's not what most people are thinking. It's just that if
Well,
you go on the internet and you go look that up, that's what's gonna pop up because it
which is
turns to that kind of psychology thing that we tend to focus on the negative.
which
Yeah.
is interesting because that exact same analogy that you just said of the dark side being louder is exactly the same reason so many fall to the dark side.
Mm-hmm.
Because once again, the people who appreciate Star Wars and a lot of the George Lucas's writing just go, "Yep, that's beautiful, that's amazing." They just sit back and they love it. But those who hate it obviously go on Twitter and blast force lightning all over the place, saying how much they hate it. It's louder, you
It
know.
is.
Yeah,
Freaking then
and
all the Star Wars haters are Sith.
it's so sad, like with Hayden and like what happened to him, man. Because I think now, like I don't know when that Little Italy interview was. I don't know if it was after or
2016.
before. So it's 16 or 17? Because The Last Jedi came out in 2017.
Oh wait, let me look actually.
Because if it was after Celebration, I think he would have had a better understanding of how the fans actually think. Because I see so many videos that are about Anakin or just or are like maybe I don't know, but have Anakin in them and people in the comments just
Little
like
Italy
one
actually
after
came out in
one.
2018, so 1 year after um uh Last Jedi came out.
So I think he went to Celebration 2017. He was there. He did some interviews and some panels, I think. So and people like freaked out when he walked out on stage. Like there was so much cheering, dude. It made me feel so good. But I see so many comments, just one after another, on these videos that are like, Hayden is Anakin. He doesn't deserve it. The writing was bad. Don't blame the actor, but which I don't agree with exactly. But he's just all these things, and it's just so good that these people aren't loud, but if you look, you'll find that the majority of them either just like him or absolutely love his character.
Yeah.
What do
Which
you
I
think? I think okay, this is a weird direction to go with this, but what do you think the parallels are just between mental health and Anakin, the Jedi Order and like the Sith and all that? What do you think the parallels are there? Because I can see a lot of them. Because I mean, just think about it. Like we as people, you obviously experience emotions, whether or not you like just talk about anxiety or depression and stuff.
Uh-huh.
I feel like the Jedi Order are kind of like those people who are just like, just deal with it. It's fine. Don't even feel that way because that's wrong.
Oh yeah, for
But I
sure.
feel like this is, and then they're like the dark side is like I don't want to say this, but like the emo of where like I'm just gonna feel this way and just suck down into here, and I'm just gonna be nothing but these emotions, versus well, it's between the two, which is yes, I feel this way. What am I gonna do with those feelings? Not letting not letting those emotions govern you, because I think this is a very big life lesson you can take from Star Wars is you can't let those emotions govern you. You can't let that blind passion or anger at yourself or the world or anything, let that govern you. I think you have to let that anger and like turn it into solutions and hope and all those different kind of things. You can't let those any of those emotions, whether or not like it's anxiety, depression, just anger, you can't let them govern you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like Luke, if you have a weapon, if there's some weapon you're using that is like maybe making it worse or making other people feel bad or whatever, throw that weapon away, get it out, and just try and, fix it. Which again plays back into what we were talking about, is that the council, they didn't tell Anakin how to not have emotion. They just told him not to. They said, you can't. I'm sorry. It's just a thing. It's just part of our thing. You can't have attachments. And he's like, well, what about my mom? How do I not care about my mom? I have these really strong feelings about this woman named Padme. How do I not do that? And they're like, yeah, I don't know. Just deal with it, bro. Which is not good at
Of course,
all.
and then like Yoda giving really cryptic answers. This leads to that, 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 leads to the dark side. You know, that's not helpful. You know. I also, oh shoot, what I was gonna say, but like I think it's interesting how Obi-Wan is the other side of that. He had someone that he cared about, and like going back to that Satine relationship, Anakin saw that and saw how wrong he felt it was. You know, because he'd had those emotions and he felt like they were right. They were good things. Like, this is a woman I care about, This is a good thing. Then he sees Obi-Wan and he's starting to realize this person has someone that they loved. They died. They couldn't save them. They don't care. How much would he not want to become like Obi-Wan? That Satine arc is so underrated because
It's
it
so
shows so
good.
so much reason why Anakin, once he found out about it, would hate Obi-Wan. Because for one, Obi-Wan understands those feelings, but he just didn't do anything with them.
Yeah, and Satine dies in his arms, dude.
And
And
then
and
he's just
Obi-Wan
like,
just sits there and lets them take him away. He doesn't like get up and like force blast them away and like start fighting Maul again and kill him. He just kind of, I don't know if he gives up, but he just kind of lets
because
go.
he's trained himself, he's kind of like told himself, he's trained himself in his head, and just that those emotions shouldn't be acted upon at all,
Yeah, which I think Obi-Wan is the
which is
prime,
wrong.
like for the prequel Jedi, for the kind of Jedi they were, he is the best example of them. But I do think if Obi-Wan wanted to, he definitely could have been a
He's the best
Satine and been
example.
fine.
Yeah, he's the best example of the problem with the way the Jedi Order raised the Jedi.
I think he's so good,
He's so
and
good.
he's really good, which he is a good Jedi. Like Obi-Wan's awesome.
He's got a
But
lot of the faults though too that are
yeah,
shown in all the Jedi.
and that line, dude, had you said the word, I would have left the Jedi Order. Man, if it like Anakin, he Anakin wanted so bad to be a Jedi. I mean, I think a lot of people love
And
Anakin.
it's almost heartbreaking. Well, no, not almost. It is that
Yeah.
that happens. Sorry, please keep.
Yes. It's okay. Anakin is he's just like, I also hear a lot of people in comments saying like Clone Wars Anakin is better than prequel Anakin. I'm sitting there like it's the same flippin' character, but I think their idea behind it is that Clone Wars Anakin is just so good, and he only cares about saving people, which is a good thing, but he's also trying to balance this life with his wife and also trying to be a Jedi. But really, what I think draws a lot of people to him is that he just wants to be good, but his desire to be good, he wants to be so good that he wants more power so he could be more good, but then slowly that power kind of gets to him and gets used against him by Palpatine, which makes him fall to the dark side and all that jazz.
Which is why like people make the mistake of not liking Anakin in the prequels because it's him at his breaking point.
Yeah,
You
it's a
know,
start and an
that's
ending.
that's what shows him breaking. He doesn't know what to do. He's all confident and stuff in the Clone Wars, but there's still this internal struggle going on the entire time, where he's watching the hypocrisy. He's watching. He has all these feelings that he's like, I need to I want to solve this. I want to be good, but he doesn't know what to do, you know. So he's always just trying to be the best he can, not because he has a god complex, but because he has a heroic complex where he's just trying to save everyone. And the Jedi aren't doing that.
I know.
We're peacekeepers, not soldiers. And he feels like maybe we should be soldiers. Maybe we shouldn't. It's the argument. I don't know. I don't know where I was going that. It's kind of like the Civil War argument, though, like where every time you try to stop a war before it starts, innocent people die. Anakin's on the opposite side of that, where he understands maybe we should be more proactive, which could be wrong.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
he's seen how that war has destroyed so much.
Excuse me while I use the lavatories real quick.
No.
Can we just appreciate like this picture on my screen? I don't know if it'll be cut out of the podcast because my name is on a tab at the top, so I'll probably edit it out. But for you looking at it, I do think there should be a little more original trilogy stuff, but I just like, you got Padme here with Luke and Leia below her. You got Anakin with the clones behind him and the Jedi, and then of course, this is great because it shows his character and whatever. Whoever made this, like, nice job. It's really cool. I like it.
I think what's cool about just the prequels versus the originals is they are just they're very different stories. The the
Yeah.
originals happen within just from this perspective, they happen within years of each, like a couple years of each other. Like 3 and 4, if I'm no sorry, 4 and 5, if I'm not mistaken, are like a year apart, and then 5 and 6 are like 3 years apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They just have a very different vibe. I mean, for one thing, they're not all about the Jedi, which the prequels are all about the Jedi, you know. But in that's what you can appreciate about the Star Wars feel about the originals is you have Han Solo, the smuggler, you have Princess Leia, the ambassador, who's just the senator, who is the princess, but now she's this bad A general, who's just like, aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? I mean, you can talk about how cool of a character she is. You've got the quirky droid and two quirky droids in the corner arguing. You got this really lovable walking carpet. You got Luke. I mean, it's the perfect D&D party, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Which is what I love about the originals.
Well, think about the way
And you get that more once you add the clones and the prequels, but
think about the way Star Wars started out. It was a movie 1977. It was a huge visual special effects outbreak, and they weren't even planning on more movies. They made this singular movie, which back then movies like that were constantly being made. These science fiction Star Wars pew pew like laser swords type movies, and you can actually really see the points in the original trilogy of the first movie, just Star Wars, which what it was called. It was just called Star Wars, where it's like, okay, yeah, that they had the idea of just making this like a one-off thing, which I love so much, that I think is so cool. And now it's developed into this entire thing enough where we've been able to discuss it of hours upon end. So
yeah, which I I I don't know if this is true, but I heard that George in an interview said he originally was planning the story of A New Hope to be split across 3 movies, but because of, I don't know, budgeting reasons or whatever, he condensed it to 1 movie, but people loved it so much, then he's like, okay, well, I can make more to this and maybe add what I was gonna have which is probably why there was another Death Star in Return of the Jedi, because maybe it was an important story element
well,
to
I
his
mean,
plot
when you
and
think
stuff.
about it, Star Wars, the movie Star Wars could have ended right there.
it could have. It
Darth
honestly
Vader
could have.
is seemingly defeated, where he just spirals off into the up, and that's what it looks like. They blew up the Death Star. That's the end of the Empire.
They get their
So it
medals.
seems they get their medals. It's the end of it. They solved it. which I think is the interesting part is about you might think that, and then you watch the Empire and you're like, oh, these guys are barely alive.
Yeah.
This rebellion is barely like functioning.
Hey, remember when the entire Republic got destroyed? Anyways, um, that's not what we're talking
We
about.
gotta eventually talk about. I just put it on the list, but like we gotta eventually talk about the Journal of the Wills
Yeah, I should read up on that more.
because
The Journal of what?
the original title. Let me
Oh,
look
oh
it up.
yes, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Why the reason why it says in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, here it is. Here it is. The Adventures of Luke Starkiller, as taken from the Journal of the Wills, Saga 1, The Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely can go into that.
I wanna,
another time.
because
Highlight that one.
George's ideas were so out there and like different from what people perceive Star Wars as, which is weird because not everyone likes the story of the Bendu, or the idea of the ghosts of Mortis,
Okay.
But that is George's idea of what Star Wars is.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
beyond the Jedi and beyond the Sith, he's built like this mythology of like the ancient creatures. I don't know. It's so cool to me, and I think people don't realize that's what his idea of it was.
Which I find interesting because it wasn't the original plan for the sequels to be about the Wills or something.
Yeah. There was a character named Mace Windy in it.
I wish we got that. Sorry, I just really wish
Well,
we got that.
yeah, but the thing with that though is that Star Wars, it's so popular, but a lot of people have only seen the movies and probably forgotten about the prequels, and they're just casual Star Wars watchers. And to think about like the difference between Star Wars and Avengers is that Avengers slowly led us into weirder and weirder comic book
To where
territory.
we got to like Thanos and the Infinity Stones, and we're all
With
just
what
like,
were
"What is this?"
Yeah.
but they utilized popular movies that gained the same kind of motion that using all the different weird quirky stuff in those movies. Whereas Star Wars, not they didn't use the big popular stage for putting that weird stuff out. They used the Clone Wars and like comics that like even half of like 1% of Star Wars fans have read.
Yeah, like think about people's reaction to midi-chlorians. They
Oh,
make
like
sense to me, but I do admit they might be a little out there for some people, but they make sense to me. And if like George is, he has these ideas
Oh
that
yeah,
he
dude.
maybe doesn't tell people about, but they're so interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, the midichlorians, Din Djarin and
which is
the guy
why
with the armor and everything.
which is why for me I just wish that like we stayed with George.
Oh yeah, for sure. I do think though, if he made that sequel trilogy, it probably would have
It would be so
not
different
done as well
it would
because
be
it's
so different.
so whack. I mean, I think it'd almost be like a Last Jedi that telling average Star Wars viewers that the whole story they were watching is just some people reading from a journal thing.
Well,
I admit it's weird to me but that's because the idea never happened. And
but
it
I
is
think
interesting, like obviously I think it's an interesting idea, but it is very odd
it's
to
so
think
weird.
about it now, but back then it might have been like, oh, okay.
But I think it's so cool is that's what the crawl screen is. Those are the journals of the wills starting to read out. That's
Oh,
the prologue of the wills. When you think about it, that's leading into the story.
hello.
That's what the crawl screen is. Those opening words, the title sequence, that's all the journey of the wills. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That's the once upon a time.
Yeah, which is very interesting. I don't know how to feel about it. Like I'm
It's so
still,
weird. It's
it's
so because you don't
so
always think about that when you think of Star Wars. You hardly ever think about that, if ever. It's just so weird to think that that's what like his plan was in the beginning.
That's so cool to me. It just I don't know. It just is.
Yeah. I think we're receiving a transmission from upstairs. There's the moon's imbalances
right.
are out of whack. There's a moonquake coming.
Okay. Okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
Oh
This is
boy.
just our intern, Beth.
oh.
Okay. Thank you. You can go back to
Yeah,
sleeping
you're welcome.
or watching Star Trek or whatever it's called. Yeah,
Star Wars of the Stars.
it's a different show. Just be quiet. It's fine.
I'm sorry.
Well, we apologize, viewers, or not viewers, audio-based viewers, based only on the audio format, because
Who
that's
knows
what
what
this
it is?
is.
You know, this recording could travel through a wormhole.
I mean, it might. I don't think
What
so.
would happen to it, man?
It would like go. I don't know. You ever seen Interstellar? This little maneuver is going to cost us 51 years, probably.
Oh boy.
That's a great movie. It also gives me anxiety. It happens to us up here in space.
Okay,
So please don't mention that movie.
Christopher Nolan, man.
Anyways, we do apologize as we are experiencing some lunar seismic issues up here.
As
So,
per usual,
as
I'm
per
already
usual,
suiting
because
up.
that is a thing. And hopefully, as we're just gonna send this out before, our audio equipment and sending and receiving signals die. So yeah, uh, don't die. We'll try not to die. This has been the lunar exploration until the moon blows up, which hopefully doesn't happen.
It hopefully.
It might happen.
Mhm.
It has been shaking a lot
It's
lately.
been
Really quite a lot. Have we not looked into this more?
no. I think we should.
Is it just me, or do we have few interns than we did before?
Only one, I think, sir.
We're only missing one?
Yes.
Oh, well, I'm sure that's fine.
Yeah, we'll be good.
You know,
All
we can
right.
write that off.
Uh,
Anyways,
until
yeah,
next time.
until next time.
Yeah, later, guys.
I'll see you.
Signing off.